This is CBC Here and Now.
Placentia is a town on edge.
There's a feeling that it's not what it used to be. Things are changing within the community and it's not for the better.
Actually, I'm thinking about selling my home. I gotta leave. I can't stay there.
A dramatic escalation in serious crime has changed the mood in this normally quiet community. That story coming up.
I just finished class. I feel a little bit dirty about doing it. It really is kind of a horrible spot.
While the picket lines are large and loud, some staff at Memorial University still have to cross them to work.
For years, there have been sexual assault nurse examiners here at St. Clair's and St. John's, but for much of rural Newfoundland and all of Labrador, that position doesn't exist. That's despite promises from government. That story coming up on Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. Police are asking the public for help following an armed robbery and an attempted armed robbery on the Northeast Avalon. Around 10:30 last night, police got a call from the Laurier Club in St. John's. Customers said a man walked in carrying a sawed-off shotgun, but he fled before the RNC arrived. Then, around midnight, police got a call about an attempted armed robbery at the SS Meagle Lounge on the CBS highway. Police say the man shot the gun at a locked door but couldn't get in, and then he fled the scene. No one was injured. Investigators believe both incidents are connected. The suspect is a white man in his 30s wearing a red hat and a reflective jacket. He was driving a dark-colored four-door car, and anyone with information or any CCTV, dash cam or cell phone footage is asked to contact police or Crime Stoppers. Meanwhile, the RCMP confirmed this week that its data shows violent crime is trending upwards.
We're certainly seeing that trend in certain areas of the province, that we have a number of more violent types of crime. And we're certainly looking at all those statistics continually to see, where we need to change our resources, allocate what we have, do the best we can to serve the communities we police in.
And speaking of allocating police resources, the mayor of Placentia is calling for a more robust police presence in his town following incidents of gun violence and home invasions. Worried citizens say they are living in fear in their own home. But as Here and Now's Terry Roberts reports, the RCMP say they are well equipped in the area.
I have a gun 3 times, it was said to me. I have a gun and I will use it.
That's what this Placentia woman heard on the other side of her bedroom door one night last year as a man ransacked her home.
It was the most horrific, terrifying experience in my life.
The woman is afraid that speaking out will invite more trouble, so CBC News has agreed not to use her name. She's one of a growing list of victims as Placentia was rocked recently by a sensational series of violent crimes, shootings, break-ins.
Things are changing within the community and it's not for the better.
The mayor is pleading for an enhanced police presence, saying the situation is unprecedented.
I've never in my 9 years as a municipal leader, either as mayor or deputy mayor, fielded as many calls as I have with regards to fear and anxiety within the community.
There's an RCMP detachment in Placentia, but an officer is not always available, and a Mountie sometimes responds from as far away as Whitburn.
A lot can happen in an hour, because that's what response time is right now.
That was the case for this woman. An hour of terror, a life forever changed.
My home is now in prison. I'm locked in my home with alarms and lights and locks all over the inside of my house. It's insanity.
The fear factor escalated late last month. Heavily armed police swarmed several neighborhoods. This followed a home invasion in which one man was shot and a manhunt that included a warning for citizens to shelter inside their homes. And earlier this month, a couple struggled desperately for an hour to prevent a man from kicking in the front door of their home. The couple was too scared to talk publicly about the incident.
The degree of violence has changed.
But the mayor says he's had enough.
Talk to seniors who feels like they got to close their curtains in the middle of the day and in night peeping out windows to see if anybody's around. They're the stories I'm hearing.
The mayor says he believes the crimes are being fueled by an escalating drug scene and the migration of people with known criminal backgrounds to the town. However, multiple arrests have been made And police say recent incidents are reflective of a spike in crime and not an overall trend. Despite vacancies elsewhere, the RCMP say they're fully staffed in the Placentia-Whitburn area.
At the time, again, we do feel we're well equipped to deal with the crimes that are occurring, notwithstanding 3 serious incidents that happened in that short amount of time that would cause alarm.
The RCMP say there's been an increase in violent crime throughout the province and that they allocate resources based on crime trends. But there's one thing that will never change.
If we receive a call for service that includes the safety of a particular individual, our officers are getting to you as soon as is possible.
That pledge, however, won't restore this woman's sense of safety.
Actually, I'm thinking about selling my home. I gotta leave. I can't stay there.
Terry Roberts, CBC News, Placentia.
Well, a frightening road crash has police reminding drivers that they are required to move out of the way of emergency vehicles. Now, in this case, the emergency vehicle was a tow truck. It was pulled over on Route 73 near Tilton just before 7:30 this morning. Its lights were activated as the driver was preparing to load a vehicle onto the truck's flatbed. But a car came up from behind and didn't move over, as the law requires, and the truck struck the flatbed. The crash sent the car flying into the air and landing on its roof. The RCMP say no one was injured, but they anticipate laying charges against the driver for not steering clear of an emergency vehicle.
Well, it was a cold morning for a good chunk of the island, especially up across, or rather a good chunk of the province, especially up across Labrador. Minus 43 again in Lab City today. You see those temperatures even towards the coast into the minus 30s, minus 21 in Cartwright, and even well below zero for a good chunk of the island as well. This cold is gripping and will continue to sink south as we head through to the weekend. And there it is right there. This will really be the story for a good chunk of the week this week, and then even heading into next week, we're talking about the potential for some cold air, but a roller coaster for some areas. We'll see temperatures up and then down as we head through the weekend as well. Right now we do have a system to the south that is bringing some snow already, and will continue to bring that snow further east as we head through the night tonight. We can see that on the radar and then take a look at what happens. So it could drop quite a bit of snow by the time we get into tomorrow morning. I'll talk about that and have your full forecast coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, the strike by Memorial University's Faculty Association has entered its second day, and as of now, no new talks have been scheduled. While professors and other faculty members are on the picket line, some of their colleagues have to cross those lines to get to work. Here Now's Jeremy Eaton explains that aspect of this story.
We love teaching, how about you? We love research, yes we do!
The second day of the strike, much drier than the first, and morale is high, and support from students still very strong.
So us geography students wanted to get together and pitch in, bring some snacks down to help support all of our professors who are fighting for a fair education for all of us.
But and her fellow students aren't the only ones caught in the middle of this strike. Memorial University has a number of per-course instructors, like Alison Coffin, who aren't a part of MUNFA.
It's unfortunate we have to cross our colleagues' picket lines and do exactly the same thing as they are not doing, that they are on strike for. It really makes, I just finished class, I feel a little bit dirty about doing it. It really is kind of a horrible spot.
Today, she spent some time on the picket line, and she's encouraging other members of her union to do the same, to listen to their concerns and show support any way they can.
We are telling all of our members to work according to their employment contract. So their employment contract says they have to cross the picket line, they have to deliver classes to students, and they have to remain on the university timeline. So we have to say you have to abide by that.
We actually have assessed that about 62% of our students.
According to the university's vice president, more than 60% of students still have at least one class ongoing. But strikers know per-course instructors are just doing their jobs.
We are all upset by this. This is completely ridiculous. It's an attempt, we feel it's an attempt by administration to pit union against union, and that has not worked. We are out stronger and in more support than ever.
With some classes still sitting, there is work on all of MUN's campuses that needs to be done, and about 500 of those workers are part of NAPE.
You can only imagine now they're conflicted. These are frontline workers themselves who have collective agreements in place. They're certainly supportive of the Munfa faculty because they work side by side with them.
Earl says he's told his members to respect those on the picket line, but the union has been proactive, giving workers NAPE signs for their vehicles.
Well, what we've done in communication with Munfa, we've identified our members so that they will know who's actually coming in. In most cases, like I said, they know them personally anyway, but just basically say, I support you, I support Munfa.
While the labor dispute moves forward, students like Butt will continue to support her professors.
It's a bit nerve-wracking for losing some of our classes and stuff, but we're here to support and we'll support everything that they need us to do.
As it stands now, both the university and Munfa say that there are no talks planned at this time, but that could change quickly. Now, based on the people that I talked to today, those who have to cross the picket line and the students impacted by it, support seems to be in favor of the professors and the faculty. Jeremy Eaton, CBC News, St. John's.
And earlier today, the Premier was asked about what role the province can play to help try to end this strike, given that a sticking point is Munfa's desire to have representation on the Board of Regents. Now, that requires government action to make changes to the Memorial University Act.
If the issue is that's keeping these two sides apart, representation on the Board of Regents, that's something that we would commit to. It's not as easy as saying that can happen overnight. The MUN Act is a very big piece of legislation. It's one that we need multiple sources of input from, but that would be a commitment that we would honor for sure.
Well, Jim Dinn is speaking out about the city's decision to evict a senior with a disability from her home. It was moving day for 82-year-old Shirley Cox, who uses a wheelchair. She lives in an apartment building on Hamilton Avenue in St. John's. Now, Cox's landlord, the City of St. John's, issued the eviction notice but hasn't disclosed the reason behind that eviction. Cox's MHA says the city refuses to discuss the decision and he doesn't understand why.
As far as I understand, she's the only person in the last few years has received such an eviction, a no-fault eviction. But it means they don't have to go give a reason, they don't have to address the reason and to rectify it. The city's own website talks about how their goal is to prevent homelessness and to grant people a quality of life and a good quality of living. That's not the case here.
Now, Shirley Cox and Jim Dinn say they have a theory on why the senior may have been evicted, but at the moment, all they have is questions. And stay with us. We'll have more on this story ahead in about 20 minutes on Here and Now. Now to Labrador, where sexual assault survivors are still waiting on a promise from the provincial government. In 2021, money was earmarked to expand SANE, the Sexual Assault Nurse Examiner program. More than a year later, and despite having some of the highest sexual assault rates in the country, the region still doesn't have specialized programs in place. Here and Now's Ariana Kelland reports, but first a warning, this story does discuss sexual assault.
If you're a victim of sexual assault, St. Clair's Mercy Hospital is likely the best place in the province to go. It's because they offer treatment for post-sexual assault care, treatment for sexually transmitted infections and pregnancy, and forensic exams. They have specialized nurses trained to deal with people who have been victims of sexual violence. They're called Sexual Assault Nurse Examiners. And for much of rural Newfoundland and all of Labrador, that position doesn't exist. A year and a half ago, politicians promised that a sexual assault nurse examiner would be here soon. In Labrador, where the rate of sexual assault eclipsed both provincial and national averages.
It's the reality of an intergenerational violence, right? That starts with colonialism and the violent encounter that in many communities introduced sexual violence as kind of a colonial reality and poison. That went unhealed and unaccounted for, that when sexual violence doesn't get the care and healing and kind of traumatic integration that it requires, that's when you see those who have been harmed go on to cause further harm.
This is a document prepared last October for Health Minister Tom Osborne, recommending to approve funding for a provincial SANE coordinator. It spells out the disadvantage most people of the province face without access to the program. Not only is a person's mental and physical health at stake, these forensic examination kits also prove more effective in court when they're done by a trained sexual assault nurse examiner. Then there's the issue of reporting to police. People who go to St. Clair's Hospital in St. John's can get a forensic sample taken and held indefinitely. That's not the case in places without a SANE program.
Here in Labrador, if a person shows up to avail of post-sexual assault medical care and they do opt to get a sexual assault examination kit, it means that both the police will be involved, and they have less control of where that kit goes and who is in care of that kit.
We asked Women and Gender Equality Minister Pam Parsons and Health Minister Tom Osborne for an interview. Those requests were redirected to Eastern Health. We asked Eastern Health to speak with a sexual assault nurse examiner to understand the program and to ask officials why it's taken so long to expand the program that they say has helped so many people. That request was also denied. But in a statement, Eastern Health said that it is in the process of hiring a provincial coordinator and that once someone is in the position, they will expand the program. But no timeline has been given. Ariana Kelland, CBC News, St. John's.
A senior member of the provincial Liberal government is stepping down temporarily. John Haggie is putting his work as education minister in MHA on hold while he deals with an unspecified health problem. He made the announcement this morning, but it's unclear how long he will be on leave. Haggie had previously taken time off in August of 2020 to deal with his health. Fellow Cabinet Minister Tom Osborne will take over the education department for now. Well, a new pilot project is flying people to St. John's for cardiac catheterization, a test that diagnoses certain heart conditions and then flying them back home the same day. The head of cardiac care says this project puts the patient first.
Typically, we'd come down, the patient would travel to us when there was a bed available, as the Premier said. We'd do what we needed to do to the patient to fix them, get them through their heart attack, and then we discharge them and they're at the front door of the health sciences. They have to make their own way home, say to Lab West again. With this model, the patient not only waits less in Lab West, they'll come down, they'll get their treatment, and they'll go back to their loved ones, typically the same day. Now, sometimes, and on occasion, that patient needs more complicated treatment that can't be done in one day. But you can see how, from the patient's perspective, this feels a whole lot better than waiting for 3 weeks in a bed.
Well, 3 flights have been done so far, bringing 25 patients to St. John's to have the procedure. The Premier says the new measure helps reduce the surgical backlog in the province, and it could be applied to other procedures in the future. Now, there are many residents in the province who have to travel for medical appointments, and for people in Western Labrador, those costs can add up quickly. A new charity is hoping to help alleviate some of those travel costs for people traveling for cancer appointments. Here Now's Daryl Din spoke with the president of Cancer Labrador West.
It is going to be a nonprofit organization to help the residents of Lab West who are unfortunately struggling with this terrible disease of cancer. With the expenses of having to travel outside of Labrador West for treatments and especially appointments, we are hoping to help raise money to help alleviate some of the stresses and financial burdens that come to each family. The people going through this journey unfortunately have so many expenses that occur all at once. You know, the travel to fly from Wabush to St. John's or any medical appointments is so expensive, and sometimes we don't get a lot of notice, therefore we can't pre-book to, you know, hopefully save some cost savings on flights. Then of course it's accommodations, taxis or a rental car, meals. So again, it gets so overwhelming and expensive. So, you know, we're hoping we're going to be able to alleviate some of these expenses for them.
And what inspired the idea to create this group?
Cancer Fairmont has this program. Dennis is an amazing man who started this in Fairmont and has reached out to us and given us so much guidance and support along our journey. And with his help, support, and guidance, you know, I wanted to be able to do this for the residents of Lab West. Unfortunately, cancer has hit my own personal family. My husband was diagnosed with cancer in October, and we have made just 9 trips, I think, or 10 trips actually. Last one was December 21st. And with us being a single income family and with the expense of us having to travel so much for appointments and surgery, it just became so overwhelming when we're had to take a reduced income with him being off work for the last 15 months. And, you know, yes, we do have an MTAP program. Unfortunately, that didn't apply to us because we were traveling through Quebec. We had to register with the government to get a nonprofit organization, our committee, and have our members on board. And we have our president, vice president, and all of our members of our committee created now. And as soon as we get some money in the bank, we're eager to help that first family, and there are many.
Well, one of the province's most accomplished pianists has died. That's Avril Baker performing right here in the CBC studio in 2004. She passed away last Thursday at the age of 78. Over the years, Baker competed in international piano competitions in Texas, Washington, Paris, and Moscow. In 1963, she married George Baker, a former senator and member of parliament for the Gander area, where they lived most of their life. She was also well known as a music teacher and for her work with the Kiwanis Music Festival and for being outspoken on the need for women to receive cervical screenings after she was diagnosed with cancer in the 90s.
Well, the extreme cold warnings now across the Big Land as well as parts of the Northern Peninsula. We'll get into the details coming up.
Well, not enough pilots, baggage problems, and canceled WestJet flights. Stay with us a little later in the show. There's more turbulence ahead for travelers.
Tony Norman and his family ordered 2 kitchens from IKEA. 75% of the order showed up. Then the company stopped shipping to Newfoundland, halting construction.
You know, it's totally unacceptable. We haven't been treated fairly by IKEA.
We'll have their story tomorrow on Here and Now.
This weather forecast has been brought to you by Newfoundland and Labrador Tourism. Whatever you're up for this winter, discover experience packages at winterupnl.ca.
Well, it was just a tad chilly in Lab West yesterday. So just how cold was it, Ashley?
Well, this cold. Take a look.
Cold weather, these noodles froze up. How could I eat it?
Yes, that's 6-year-old Chelsea Quinn. Her mom, Hazel Gasita, posted this video and pictures yesterday.
Yeah, this was the forecast yesterday. -42 feels
Wow.
like -51. It was definitely very cold, and that cold streak is continuing.
Seems like it's been cold, really cold in Labrador for quite a while already.
A couple days now, yeah, and now we've got that cold air really gripping most of the big land. It's freezing. Yeah.
Bundle up, my goodness. And we were talking last night about such a difference between this part of the province and that part of the province.
Yeah, and even today, again, I mean, temperatures are dropping now across the island, but take a look at the temperatures this afternoon. So it was -43 this morning in Lab City, but climbed up to about -25. And the cold spot across the province was in Nain at -27, but those temperatures across the island are starting to dip as well. So into the minus single digits, hovering around 1 degree for a good chunk of the afternoon today in St. John's. But those temperatures will drop. So it is a bit of a change from yesterday by anywhere from 3 to about 6 degrees pretty much across the board. Happy Valley Goose Bay, you're sitting exactly where you were yesterday. But this area of low pressure is leading to not a whole lot of wind going on, but that cold pocket of air certainly in place. And we're starting to see some flurry activity down along the south coast of the island as well. Now, taking a look at the current sustained winds, because that area of low pressure is so far offshore and we've got a bit of a high pressure in behind it, there's not a whole lot of wind to speak of, but it is still, with these cold temperatures, leading to a bit of a wind chill. So it's feeling more like -13 in Corner Brook right now. You can see up across Labrador, temperatures feeling exactly where they're sitting, except along the coast where Makovic is feeling more like -36. But it is bringing a wind chill across parts of the island. -8 is what it feels like in Gander, and -3 right now in St. John. So like I said, the extreme cold warnings now, all of Labrador is currently under that extreme cold warning, and then Northern Peninsula East, north of Hare Bay, is where we're seeing those significant wind chills. Now, look at the temperatures overnight tonight. Again, dipping into the high -20s or low -30s. Lab City about -35. And then for the Northern Peninsula into the -20s as well. Now, west coast parts of Central, you're down to -14 to -18 overnight, and then even double digits along the south coast of the island as well. Winds will ramp up as we get into the morning hours for eastern Newfoundland. St. John's, you'll sit around -8. In fact, we've got some snow on the way as well. So as far as the wind chills are concerned, I'll just step out of the way here, and you can see as we head through the overnight period, that is when the most extreme wind chills will occur. As far as Lab West is concerned, we're talking between -50 to -55. Towards the coast, those wind chills between -40 and -45. And then again, Northern Peninsula East, your wind chills in the -30. So how does that compare? Well, take a look at this. So the biggest thing with extreme cold is the risk of frostbite. So exposed skin, when we're talking about wind chills between -28, -39, your skin could freeze between 10 to 30 minutes. And then that obviously gets a lot less the colder the wind chill. So very high between 40 and -47, and then -48 to -55 plus. You can see frostbite within 2 to 5 minutes or less. So this is why those warnings exist and why it's very important to keep bundled up if you are planning on enjoying enjoying is a strong word, but being outside in this cold air. Taking a look at what's going on as far as satellite radar is concerned, some flurries on the west coast, some flurries for eastern Newfoundland, and that will continue as we head through the night tonight as a little bit of a disturbance moves through. Extreme southeastern portions of the island, of the Avalon rather, will likely see some rain in the mix, but it moves through fairly quickly. Once we get into the morning, most of that snow will end, but there's a good chance lots of us will have to shovel as we get into the morning before we leave the house tomorrow morning. As far as the west coast is concerned, you'll see some flurries develop again along the afternoon hours, and then same thing along the south coast. Otherwise, lots of sunshine up across Labrador, and that cold air will continue. How much snow are we talking about? Well, between 5 to 10 is a good bet. We may see some pockets of 10 to 15 centimeters, but overall that's where most of the snow should fall. In the metro area, we're talking between 5 to 10 centimeters of snow by the time we get into Wednesday morning. Here's your temperatures for tomorrow. In behind that, lots of cold air. -8 to -10. Again, winds a bit brisk out of the northwest between 30 to 50 kilometers per hour. So that is going to lead to wind chill values tomorrow in the -teens. And then for Labrador, your temperatures looking into the -20s, but lots of sunshine. I'll have your long range forecast coming up.
82-year-old Shirley Cox says she's being evicted today because she's a smoker. The city of St. John's is coming here to make sure that she leaves. The city won't say why they're kicking her out. That story coming up.
While I was doing my radiation, my photography actually was my coping mechanism.
The crow was flying by Signal Hill and he had an egg in his mouth.
There's a bit of tension there sometimes, but I'm becoming very good at diffusing that.
I find black and white, it draws your attention into what's happening and you can kind of capture the emotions a little bit more.
You know, there are lots of things going on, chances for you to capture moments that people love to see.
I'm here on Hamilton Avenue in St. John's with a follow-up to a story that CBC NL covered back in October, and it's the story of 82-year-old Shirley Cox, who has found out that she is going to be evicted from her apartment today, and Shirley is with me right now. So when we last spoke in October, you received an eviction notice. What has happened since then?
I don't know. I really don't.
Have they given you, the city of St. John's, have they given you an explanation as to why you have to leave?
No. No explanation, no nothing.
Because you assume it's because you're a smoker, correct?
I think so, but I don't know.
Is it possible that there's, you smoked in your apartment and they're unhappy with that?
Oh no, I don't smoke in my apartment, that's for sure.
But you do smoke right in near the front of the building, right?
Yeah, because I can't get up or down. You go and look at it and see.
Well, because in your wheelchair you can't make it up and down, that's the issue?
Right.
Has the city told you anything? Have you spoken to the city at all? Have you tried to get some answers?
Yeah, but they don't say nothing. They don't give me no reason, no nothing. They says they don't have to have a reason.
I'm sorry?
They says they don't have to have a reason.
Yeah, I think technically, according to the act that governs this, I think that they're right about that. How do you feel that it's come to this?
I don't know. I don't know if I'm on my head or my heels. I'm just in a vacuum.
Do you know where you're going to go?
They say Hazelwood.
What do you mean they?
The people that are helping me.
Okay, so you might be going to Hazelwood. How do you feel about going there?
It's all I can do. And there's going to be another person there too, right?
Sorry, another person where?
In the apartment with me.
Okay, so you're going to have a roommate.
Yeah.
And you've been living here by yourself, more or less independent, right?
Yeah.
Do you have any sort of understanding at all? Is that maybe the city's got somebody else they want to give your apartment to? Or is there any kind of reason that you can sort of figure out in your head that would...
No. Only the smoking, and I'm just in limbo.
Well, Jim Din, you're the local MHA for Ms. Cox. What's going on here today?
Well, she's facing eviction, and it's reprehensible. I have to say, in part of the city, we've attempted for months now to try to resolve this and to engage the city in dialogue, and they've steadfastly refused. We've contacted councillors, the city department, and unlike, I guess, when we're contacting the Newfoundland and Labrador housing, where we usually get cooperation, we've received very little here.
Now, Elizabeth, you've made some representations on behalf of Mrs. Cox. Can you give me a sense of what has happened to get us to where we are?
After a long discussion with them about what this would cause, that it could cause homelessness and she could lose her material possessions and that she would be put into shelter. And I explained all of these things, as well as she's in a wheelchair and she's disabled, and it's very, very difficult to find housing for a disabled person. The law still upheld the fact that it was a 3-month eviction, a no-fault eviction, so the city has the right to evict her without any cause.
I mean, is it possible the city said, okay, Shirley Cox is one person, we have a family of 3 or 4, and we have to look at the greatest good for the greatest number, but again, we don't actually have any kind of explanation.
Well, I think in the shelter system and the housing system, as I understand it, people without housing are housed first. People with who are victims of violence are housed first, and there's a protocol, and she's certainly well up that protocol. So keeping a person housed is better than sending them into housing, and it also becomes a situation where people become hard to house, and that's something we don't want because then they're on the street.
Last question for you. Is it possible that there's little sympathy for this 82-year-old individual because she's a smoker?
You know, I think for many of the people we deal with, that's probably the one of the few comforts they might have. But Shirley does not smoke in her apartment. I'm not a smoker. I've been in her apartment. And she does try to smoke outside, and she'd probably use the smoking area if it was accessible. And I can't help but think that's part of the reason is maybe they don't want to make that more accessible to her. The other part for Shirley, though, I had to say this, is that the part that's causing her the most regret is that she has a lot of friends here. She's made a lot of friends, and I've met a few of them, and she's now going to a place where basically she's going to be isolated from those friends. To me, that social isolation is detrimental to a senior.
Well, the City of St. John's declined our request for an interview. It did, however, send along a lengthy statement which reads, in part, decisions about ending a tenancy are never taken lightly. On November 30th, the city sought an adjudication on this matter from the Provincial Residential Tenancies Board. They upheld our termination of the lease. Connection for Seniors is working with the tenant to find suitable housing. They selected the date for the tenant to be relocated to new accommodations. The city did not make this decision. Well, some bad news for Atlantic Canadians traveling to Europe this summer. You won't be flying WestJet out of Halifax. The Calgary-based airline is canceling this summer's transatlantic flights from Halifax, but may resume those flights next year. It says its summer tickets were not yet for sale. The airline canceled its service between St. John's and the UK back in 2018. It instead chose to make Halifax's Stanfield Airport its hub for flights to Europe. Now, the company says it's dealing with capacity challenges, and last summer WestJet operated non-stop seasonal services between Halifax and Dublin, Glasgow, London, Gatwick, and Paris. Well, the whole airline industry is dealing with challenges like finding people to fly their planes. Airlines, large and small, are trying to cope with a shortage of pilots. And as the CBC's Nisha Patel explains, there's no easy fix.
Zona Savic is training to become a commercial pilot, and demand for grads like her is sky high. Amid mass layoffs in the airline industry during the pandemic, many young people chose other careers.
The pandemic kind of delayed things a little bit, but I did end up starting my flight training.
Soaring training costs and low starting wages are also discouraging. Tack on a wave of retirements, and it adds up to a serious labor crunch.
It's a cyclical business or industry, and when it's in its downturn, sometimes it maybe not be attractive for some.
The number of commercial pilots' licenses issued by Transport Canada has plunged nearly 80%, from more than 1,100 in 2019 to about 240 last year.
We're in talks with our partners in ways that we can broaden our school.
Big carriers like Air Canada and WestJet offer more attractive salary and benefits, so they have fewer problems hiring, leaving small airlines desperate for qualified candidates.
We haven't had enough pilots for a long time.
That dynamic is one that Sunwing Airlines says is partly to blame for its holiday season disruptions.
All the management staff is flying the planes now because they have no choice. So there's a huge problem.
And as the country sees new low-cost airlines expand, so does the need for more pilots.
All needing pilots, all sucking pilots from all the other operators.
Experts say the personnel problem could weigh on the industry, but with years of training required, there's no quick fix.
You can't become a 737 pilot in a few months. Like, you need to gain some experience first.
The industry is trying to recruit new candidates as well as offering incentives to draw more women like Savic.
It's definitely something I'd like to do for the rest of my life or career. It's just definitely driven by a lot of passion.
So the lack of pilots could add further turbulence to travel at a time when airlines are already struggling to meet customer demand. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
And staying with air travel, growing piles of lost luggage in Canadian airports. It's becoming a familiar scene. The CBC's Sophia Harris looks at the problem and what's being done about it.
I feel extremely angry.
Deborah Cleary was exasperated after waiting more than a month for her suitcase. It disappeared when flying from Italy back to Montreal on Air Canada. 2 weeks ago, Cleary returned to the Montreal airport to search again.
There were just bags that were piling up and piling up.
But hers was still nowhere to be found.
I'm just sort of desperate to get my bag back.
Baggage problems first emerged in the summer. The airlines blamed staffing shortages. Then in December, the cause was massive winter storms disrupting flights.
Delays equal missing bags.
This former Air Canada executive says Ottawa needs to provide more funding to help keep airport operations running smoothly.
There's obviously a need for better infrastructure, better resources for airports to make them more resilient to these weather events.
There's also the problem of locating missing bags.
We zoomed in on Google Maps and it is a public storage facility.
Nikita Reese was able to track the whereabouts of her husband's missing suitcase thanks to an AirTag tracker inside the bag. Even so, Air Canada declared the luggage lost.
The most frustrating thing about it was we had no way of getting it. Even though we knew the location and we told the airline so many times.
My bag!
She finally got the bag back last week, more than 4 months after it had disappeared during a flight home from Greece.
Minister Algabra.
The transport minister says airlines need to step up their game.
It's frustrating that airlines still have not modernized their luggage handling system.
Air Canada says its baggage operations have returned to normal and that Reese got $2,300 compensation. Following a CBC News inquiry to Air Canada, Cleary also got her suitcase back.
It's just been a series of frustrations.
Ottawa says it's beefing up its air passenger rights regulations, which may include new rules for missing baggage. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Vancouver.
A new recruit is capturing the hearts of first responders on a First Nations reserve in Quebec. And this four-legged addition has a very important job, supporting the team's mental health. CBC's Gunacio Deer from our CBC Indigenous unit has that story.
You wanna go outside? She's only 15 weeks old and she's been on the job for 3 of those, but she already runs this place.
Petting her just takes away that stress level. You can see her atmosphere and her presence just changes everyone's mood.
This Portuguese water dog has an important job with the Kahnawake Fire Brigade.
Hey!
She's there for mental health support for the members who provide fire and ambulance services to the community. Statistically, they're at greater risk of experiencing mental health issues, which is why they named her Onunkwa, or medicine, in Ganyageha.
her ability to sense that somebody is going to need some comforting is definitely developing already, because when you come in, she goes to you, she greets you, and gives you that opportunity to just like, you know what, there's nothing else going on but this puppy at this moment.
In a tight-knit community, being a first responder has its own unique challenges.
Every time we hear the pager go off, it could be for our family. We don't know where we're going. Like myself, I've treated my parents and my grandparents on multiple occasions. It's something that we know that's the reality of our job, and that's kind of why I'm doing this job. I want to do it because I want to take care of my family, my friends, and my community.
So for Phillips, having a puppy around helps after tough calls and long days.
Any other work atmosphere in an office setting, you don't just have dogs running around, so it's just such a different feeling, and it's just so comforting and nice to have her.
But it also comes with new, unexpected duties.
I think she has to poop now.
Gonna see you, dear.
No, come here.
CBC News, Kahnawake.
Oh, that was so cute. I was just saying to Ashley, I wish that we could take our dogs to work like that.
I say that every day at lunch.
We wouldn't get much work done though, really, to be honest.
No, that's true.
Okay, so long range forecast, and things are getting a bit brighter these days.
They are getting brighter. We officially hit a sunset at 5 o'clock in St. John's today. So the days are certainly getting longer. We're gaining, let's take a look. We're gaining about 2 hours and 47 minutes a day at this point of daylight. In a week, we'll be seeing a sunset around 5:11. In a month, 5:43. And then by March 12th, when those clocks change, we'll be seeing a sunset around 7 o'clock here in St. John's. Now up across Labrador, you're seeing the daylight much faster. 3 minutes and 29 seconds of daylight each day you're gaining. And by the time you get through to another month, you're looking at those sunsets past 6 o'clock and then eventually 7:26 by the time we get to March 12th. So that's certainly nice, and we've seen the sun a little bit here and there, especially with this cold air up across Labrador. Thursday's forecast still hanging in there as far as these chilly temperatures into the -20s. Nain sit around -28 through the day. But we do have that cold air continuing across the island. So -6 to -9, northern peninsula into the -teens, and lots of sunshine it looks like at this point. We're going to see the onshore flurry activity though, and squalls potentially along the west coast of the island, and particularly in those higher elevations. You'll see quite a bit of snow over the next week or so, as is typical when we start to see this cold air, open ocean, and the onshore flow. And then for eastern areas of the island, you're looking at a few flurries for Thursday evening. And then Friday, we're on the roller coaster ride. Those temperatures are actually going to climb right back up above zero. And it does look like some areas will see that change over to rain, particularly through central and eastern Newfoundland at this point. Likely just a few hours of rain snow mix through central, but a complete change over to rain for the eastern half of the island by the time we get into Thursday. Cold again for Lab West, but starting to get into some of that milder air again for coastal areas of Labrador. At Cartwright -3 will be your daytime high on Friday. Taking a look at the long range forecast, there's that roller coaster ride. Friday up above zero and then back down for the weekend. It's also, Friday will be the start of a windy weekend pretty much across the board. That will continue into Saturday. And then Sunday we'll see the chance of some flurries returning, but then right back down. Temperatures really not moving much, between -8 and -10 really through the weekend. Now for central Newfoundland, after that, Saturday and Sunday looking not too bad. Temperatures will moderate a little bit by Sunday afternoon around -7. But western Newfoundland, like I said, you're in that onshore flow, which is the potential for some squalls, which will likely be heavy at times on Saturday and through the day on Sunday. And then for eastern Labrador, you're looking at flurries pretty much through the weekend, and same thing for Lab West. And again, your temperatures in the -20s and overnight lows in the -30s. Just before we leave you tonight, I wanted to share this photo. This is a moon halo, and Gail captured this one in Terra Nova. And what that means is when you see this, typically you'll see precipitation within 24 hours. So Great shot there. Thank you so much. If you have any photos, send them to Facebook, Twitter, or email them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Oh, that is so neat. I thought it was the sun at first. It's a bright moon.
It is a bright moon, yeah, it certainly was.
Oh, well, that's it for us on this evening. Thank you so much for spending part of your night with us. Hope you'll be back again tomorrow.
Good night.